Hey, welcome everybody to today's episode of Wired for Growth podcast. Very excited to have a good friend of mine and mentor, Steve Longbrake, join us today. Steve, I prepped a quick bio to introduce you to the group, but I figured I'd just hand it over. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm 72, man. How much time do you have?
Tons of time.
I was born in a small town in Ohio, and my dad worked at a steel foundry, and my mom worked hard at home and then had some part-time jobs in addition to that. And I think the greatest gift they gave our family was how much they loved each other.
Yeah.
They put each other ahead of the kids. The Bible's really clear about husbands giving up their lives for their wives, wives loving their husbands. And one of the things I've noticed in the 72 years I've been around is that a lot of people seem to be putting their kids ahead of their spouse. Mm. And I think a great gift of confidence and security that mom and dad gave us was how much they loved each other. So I like to start there.
Yeah, that's great.
And I was in a small town that had farms all around it. So as soon as I was old enough to lift a straw bale, Dad found a farmer that would hire me to bale straw. And so I worked for farmers and played sports from age 8. Well, actually before that, not organized, but organized sport from age 8 until I finished college.
A little bit of basketball right here.
Yeah, played basketball mostly, played basketball in college. But, and sport, it was good and healthy. And mom and dad came to the games. One of the things I noticed later, I coached. My parents were there to enjoy the game, and it wasn't about me.
Sure.
And my dad was really faithful. I was a good basketball player, and so my name got in the paper and that stuff. But Dad was really faithful to teach me that it was a team sport, and they tend to select the people that score the most points. That may not even be the person that contributes the most. And he said, without the other people, so don't let that stuff ever go to your head. He was great at helping me stay humble. Did that, and then college was about basketball. Should have been more about academics. But I met my wife there. Came out of college and worked at a YWCA, went back to school for another year, ended up going and teaching and coaching and education at a school in Worthington, Ohio, Worthington Christian School. And from there, came to Blackhawk Christian School in Fort Wayne. Dave Jeremiah had planted a church and school there, and he wanted me to come be the basketball coach, and I became assistant administrator, and a couple of years later, I became the administrator. And my wife, Renee, and I came over here in 1979 to Fort Wayne from Columbus, Worthington, Ohio. Was at Blackhawk Christian School for 24 years.
Wow.
And worked as an associate pastor at the church there. One of the things I loved about that part of my life was I got to learn business. I was intrigued by business. I read a lot of books on business. And when you operate a school that's K through 12, and you have to learn to read financials, you have to sell, you have to buy. There are just a lot of things, and I learned a lot about business, and I loved it.
Yeah.
A friend of mine called me, the guy that I had actually played basketball with, and he had wanted to hire me in his business, but finally he just said, I just think you ought to pray about leaving Blackhawk Christian School and doing something else. Mm-hmm. And that was 2002. And I'd been committed to stay in the job I was in unless an opportunity came up for me that was broader to build the kingdom of God or deeper or both. And I'd had offers to go to other Christian schools, but it was just more money. It wasn't broader. It wasn't deeper.
Sure.
And so I'd stayed there for 24 years. I said, man, what are you really talking about? He said, I just want you to pray about it. He goes, just consider the possibility that I'll hire you and you do whatever God brings up, and I'll pay you a salary. And that's pretty broad.
It is.
And so told some other guys that, ended up going to the school board and the elder board of the church, asking their advice. They all asked me what I'd do. I said I would start a ministry to think about how to help business people in the marketplace honor God in the marketplace. So we started something called Race to Win Ministries in Fort Wayne. Did that, worked out really well. We had a large mailing list, a lot of participation. I coached a lot of executives there, ended up coaching a lot of nonprofit executive directors. And a family foundation hired me to, with my wife, go to Africa and Europe a lot and work with missionaries and help them become more strategic, because I liked strategic planning.
Definitely.
And most missionaries are entrepreneurs, and they grow it as big as they can get it, like a lot of entrepreneurs do in business.
Sure.
And when they need the strategic help and they need to start to delegate authority and they need to start to give up some power, it's hard.
Yeah,
and
for
so
sure.
That's what I tried to help them do. And Nance and I were able to do that together, which I loved. And eventually that family foundation, the in-house attorney for them, asked me if I'd be willing to come work for Ambassador Steel. They fabricated and distributed rebar all over the eastern United States. It was their family foundation, and I came and worked for Ambassador Steel, and I coached all their executive teams and each of their individual members, and helped them think about how to build the kingdom on that platform, and some other relational things that I learned how to do.
That's great.
Did that, and he sold that steel business and started a think tank at first that became a holding company, and we started Ambassador Enterprises, and I worked there for 6 years, and then ended up coming to Warsaw to work with Sylvius Insurance Group, because I'd just been helping them for a couple years because I liked them so much.
Oh, yeah.
And they asked me if I'd be willing to come work here. And when I asked them what my job would be, they said they'd like for me to draw up a job description of what I do best and what I like most. Well, that was broad.
And you said, I've been here before.
Yeah, and that was deep. So that's what I did. And I came in 2014 and started working in Warsaw and retired from there 2 years ago. Okay.
What have you been doing in retirement? I know you're keeping busy.
Yeah, I'm really thankful. I didn't expect it. I was asked to serve on a board, and the first for-profit board that I'd been on a lot of nonprofit boards, but the first for-profit board I served on, I said, well, I'd love to be on your board if I can focus on, you'll have a lot of people focusing on finances, but I'd like to focus on relationships within the business, leaders and their relationship with each other and with the people that we're following, and help think about how to produce cultural and kingdom returns in the marketplace on that platform. They liked that idea. I started serving on that board, and now I serve on four for-profit boards.
Okay.
And my friend and I, who used to be president at Tower Bank, we have a consulting business. He lives in Florida. I live up here, and we work with the people that we want to work with in consulting.
Yeah, that's great. Steve, you and I met at Sylvius Insurance Group.
Yes.
I had an IT role, and you just described your role. Something that I've taken from that time period and really tried to apply at Winona IT is the idea that you run a business for multiple returns, and that if you can have appropriate focus in the three areas, prioritize them correctly, yields good results. And you've seen that time and time again.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about what are those three returns at a high level, but also where did you really establish that? Where did you kind of have that epiphany? And I know it was probably a team effort, but
it was.
But tell me a little bit about the inception of that.
During the tank years at Ambassador Enterprises, we spent a lot of time thinking about which returns we should be focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we landed on, and that I've learned and learned more about in the last years, is financial returns are first in business.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have said that years ago.
Yeah.
Producing really incredible financial returns builds an opportunity to invest in what will produce cultural returns and has the potential to produce kingdom returns.
Right.
So first in order is the financial returns. You have to do the work. You have to be in the business, doing it excellently. It does honor God too, but we want to produce those financial returns because we don't have the opportunity for cultural and kingdom returns if we don't have that.
Is
So
this
that's first in order?
Is this where the expression "no money, no mission" comes from?
Yeah.
Is that in alignment with what you're saying?
Sure
Okay.
is.
Yeah.
So first in order, but second in order, and also second in significance, in my opinion, is producing cultural returns. So investing in the community where you exist.
Yeah.
It might be where your home office is, but it also might be where your customers reside. But investing in the communities where you have a presence and investing financial returns into that development of those communities, that culture, to help really grow that up, that can produce opportunities to then have an impact, potential impact for kingdom returns, eternal returns. Yeah. And those I can't measure so well because one of the things, the Bible says God saves people, God grows people. I just proclaim what I know about him.
Sure.
So I don't produce the returns, but he does. Those cultural platforms that you can produce by investing in developing communities, investing in the nonprofits in your community, helping those get better, investing in other for-profits, investing in your vendors, investing in your customers, produces opportunities. They can see you live out your faith.
Yeah.
And then perhaps they'll ask you about why you have the hope that you have, and you might get to proclaim it. And then perhaps those kingdom returns will be produced.
Yeah.
So first in order, financial. Second in order, cultural. Third in order, kingdom or eternal returns, but they're the most significant.
Yeah. So priority, you just laid out, significance, kind of reverse order here. Talk to me a little bit more. I think that the question people are going to have is about the eternal returns. Talk to me a little bit more about that. Can you maybe give me a slightly more specific example? How can an owner ensure the business is producing eternal returns?
I don't think it can.
Okay.
But I do think it can ensure that there are inputs.
Sure.
That perhaps may produce those returns. So building the inputs into a strategic plan for cultural and kingdom returns, I can measure those. Now, in the cultural, you can measure returns because you'll see real productivity and relational health in communities, and so you can measure those.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the eternal returns, it's hard to measure.
Okay. Tell me about, at a high level, tell me about an instance where you've been able to help shape an organization into focusing on these three returns. I think we both agree a lot of organizations focus financially.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the extent of their focus. Because we both agree based off what you just said, it should be the primary focus. It should come first.
It should be built into the strategic plan.
Yeah, certainly. But it shouldn't be the extent of the focus. So tell me about, and how do you help people to see this a little bit?
Well, one of the things when I started to get an opportunity to help people develop strategic plans, almost everybody wanted to find out what they should do, what their mission should be. And they wanted to know what their mission was. We helped understand what their values were to discover their mission.
Sure.
And so, but then actually casting a vision that includes the kinds of returns that I'm interested in causes all of them to say, I asked them this question. Mission is really about what you do, but why are you doing it? What's the purpose behind that?
Yeah.
And that causes everybody to say, what's something beyond making money, earning a living? Those are good things. But the why includes if there really is life after death, if there really is a God, if there really is eternity ahead, then our why ought to be something about that.
certainly.
So helping each business answer the question, why are you in business? And honestly, I think every Christian influenced business has the same purpose, because Jesus boiled it down. When the Pharisees came to him and they said, what's the most important commandment? He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And he said, and the second one's just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And he said, all the law and the prophets hang on those two commands. And then he said, I came to fulfill all of that. So if my purpose, if the why, I think all of it, somehow the words will be different. Everybody can wordsmith their own.
Oh, sure.
But I think it's true that it needs to be about honoring God, bringing him glory, having a focus of attention on him and pointing people toward him, and loving people. So helping them build out a mission statement that would include, okay, we exist, why? For this reason, what we're going to do, and how we're going to do it.
Yeah, wow. Steve, when you go through that process of helping those entrepreneurs and business owners understand that, surely sometimes you came to the conclusion, well, this leadership team is not aligned, not healthy. What were some of the signs as you were working with businesses and you went through this process that you were able to determine we've got a problem here? What are some of those signs?
I think early on, I realized if you have people on your leadership team that don't share your values and don't really understand the why, when they're at a leadership level, you'll spot that because their behaviors will reveal it. So the Bible says only God knows the heart. I never assume I know somebody's motive, but I'm very free to ask, Michael, I saw this behavior. Why did you do that?
Sure.
And if they give me an answer, they'll typically give me an answer. And sometimes they're sorry for the behavior that they did. That's good.
Yeah.
And sometimes they justify and defend the behavior that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And when I then say, well, that's a behavior that doesn't lend itself to building a good team, when they defend that, that's how you'd spot it.
For example, the way they treated somebody poorly or
their own team.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because their leadership team, the number one customer in your business are your teammates.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
You're serving them and helping people really understand that. And I'd say the quality that I've seen, that I finally learned, I used to hire based on integrity and skill set. And then I finally learned attitude was more important than that. So a humble, teachable person. And what you find, if you hire for competencies first, you often find a lot of pride there because people are really proud of the skill set they've developed.
Absolutely.
But that causes conflict relationally.
Yeah.
So I look for humility and teachability. And I always ask people when I'm interviewing them, are you teachable? And they always say yes.
Of course.
And then I'll say, now by that I didn't mean, do you learn all the time? Because most people like to learn what they want to learn. How receptive are you to teaching that you don't want to hear, but is true? That's what teachable means.
And what are most of those answers in the interview?
Quiet.
Yeah. They're taking a deep look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And sometimes though, I'll have somebody say, I do want to grow. I do know I have flaws. I do want people to speak the truth to me and confront me about those things. And you can spot real humility.
Oh, I try to ask the question in the interview, tell me something that you're really working on about yourself.
Yes. Great question.
And it's like, well, I'm doing pretty well, so I'm not really working on anything. It's like, okay, all right. So,
one of the things when I was spending a lot of time overseas, it was the time I was trying to discover how to identify humble people.
Yeah.
And so I ask people all the time, what are the qualities you see in a humble person? One thing that came up all the time, no matter what culture I was in, was they were good listeners. That's something you can spot. That doesn't mean they're quiet.
Sure.
The quietest people often aren't listening at all. they're having a conversation with themselves.
They're processing what the pieces they want to process internally.
So you spot people who are really listening when they're asking questions about what you're saying, questions to gain more understanding. And when you spot that, that's usually somebody who's more teachable.
Yeah, sure. There's an innate curiosity they have about your opinion, your perspective, and they're trying to put themselves in your shoes to truly listen.
Yeah. And Michael, you've been one of the best listeners I ever worked with.
Well,
You're always asking questions to understand.
Yeah. I think I'm a generally very curious person that likes to gain a more holistic opinion based on other people's perspectives. At least I try to do that. But Steve, this is so interesting. I remember when we at Winona IT made the switch from focusing on what are your technical skills, how much experience. Those things are important, especially, I think I said on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, especially if you're a brain surgeon or a pilot. I mean, you got to know how to fly the plane. But we've really flipped the script, and we're talking a lot about soft skills, collaboration in particular. We want good collaborators. Now, I know this is something you're really passionate about, and you've taught me a good collaborator is somebody who's team-oriented. They're also assertive. Can you talk a little bit about what does it mean to be team-oriented? What does it mean to be assertive? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that we discovered when we were working hard at what collaboration might look like and how important was it. We had a conflict management tool that we used. It was assessment. And people tend to manage conflict. They either compete, and sometimes you do need to compete when there's conflict.
Sure.
They sometimes avoid. Sometimes you need to avoid conflict. There are some people that are so stiff-necked and stubborn that the Bible would say, don't spend your time with them. If you're in conflict, that just arguing over and over again is not good conflict management. Right. So there's a time to avoid people. And there also, you might want to avoid some conflict if they have a big gun and you don't have any. So then also there are people that naturally accommodate, and they just go along to get along too often. Mm-hmm. And what we've been teaching in our culture is that we value compromise a lot. And for small things, for things that aren't really critical, compromising quickly is a good idea. Get it done and move on. But for things that are important, collaboration is speaking the truth to each other and never fearing that, but doing it graciously and cooperatively as a team. Mm-hmm. When everybody speaks the truth, but they do it graciously and cooperatively, the outcome, the collaborative decision making that comes out of that is really, really good. And so I think my numbers are just wrong. My numbers are wrong, but they're numbers I throw out. About 15% of the time, you probably are going to need to compete. Maybe 15% of the time, you're going to need to avoid conflict. Some 15% of the time, you might accommodate, and 15% you might want to compromise. But I think the majority of the time, no, plurality, 40% of the time, you probably should be really intent on discovering the better way to do it and doing that together by speaking the truth always and doing that graciously.
Is what you're describing, is it in essence effective leadership?
Yes.
Or is there much more to it than what you just laid out?
I think that is the essence of really healthy community on a leadership team.
Okay.
So many times CEOs come to a meeting, especially if they're owner CEOs. They come to a meeting, they say, here's a problem we're trying to solve today. They've already solved it.
Sure.
And they're looking for their team to tweak their solution.
Sure.
Okay. That's not collaboration.
Yeah. That's almost this, it's almost a smokescreen of sorts, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, I was working with a team. It was a college president and his executive team. And I just said to him, hey, I'll say his name was Sam. I said, Sam, do you think it's possible that you do that you bring solutions to the table rather than problems to the table? I said, and I understand it because when you're the leader, you're thinking about this stuff in the shower.
Yeah.
You're thinking about it in the car on the way there. But is it possible that you bring your solution and you just want them to tweak it rather than looking for a collaboration to really discover a better way together by dealing with the problem instead of tweaking your solution? And he said, no. And everybody behind him in the room went, yes.
Yeah.
Because that's normal, So healthy collaboration is problem solving, not solution tweaking.
Sure. Now, not to confuse that with it's okay for us to ask our employees, hey, if you're going to bring a problem upwards, if you're going to try to delegate upwards, please come armed with some solutions.
Yeah,
So you're not saying that that's not okay.
No, that's okay. But I will say this, I think we've pushed that too far.
Okay.
I think we have, especially in corporate America, they want you to bring solutions, not problems to the table.
Right.
And I think the team does a better job at solving problems than an individual.
Sure.
And every CEO should realize his collective team, her collection of people, collectively, they know much more.
Oh, yeah.
And so looking for that is really, really critical.
Steve, really interesting thought there. One of the questions I wanted to ask you is, what do you see as the top problems leadership is facing today? And I know maybe the answer changes every so often, but just what are you seeing a lot of right now in your consulting? And I've got one in particular I want to bring up to you, but what are the really common trends today?
I think the biggest problems I run into all the time are unhealthy relationships on the team. Mm-hmm. When 5 Dysfunctions of the Team was written,
oh yeah,
that stuff shows up. If the relationships aren't good between the people on the team, those dysfunctions show up all the time. And often it's the team with the CEO.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it might be team members with each other as well.
Sure.
That's the biggest one. And I think when we have partners on our team that don't share our values, when I say it all the time, make sure that the people at a partner level, I'm not talking about financially partner, but a partner in trying to accomplish your mission.
Yeah.
The people that are really partners at a partner level and have influence on others, those have to be aligned with your values. And spotting those teachable people and hiring the right people.
Yeah.
Because we're tempted. It is so tempting to hire a skill set.
Definitely.
Because they're going to produce those financial returns that you want.
Right.
But once you have those financial returns, how to handle those and what you do to produce the kind of cultural returns within your business, it's hard if you don't have people that are aligned.
Over the course of your career at the school, ambassador, everywhere else, I know this is a tough question, but what % of unaligned teams can kind of overcome this? Has it been a small fraction, or has it been the vast majority? I suppose it's probably a very different answer on do they have the same moral compass and other elements?
If they have a great leader, they all overcome it.
Okay.
Because you either teach the people that are your partners to become better partners relationally, or you let them go if they aren't willing to do that.
Yeah.
So everybody has the potential to do it.
Steve, I want to talk to you about something I've been thinking a lot about recently. Recently in my position, we've had a couple, I'll say, losses recently. Taken a couple L's, if you would. And, I remember some advice from you way back. Don't get too high and don't get too low. Look, you can feel good about a major new client. That's fine, but you do have to come back down after a short period of time, and same with the loss. And what advice would you give somebody like myself when the losses really start to pile up? And it feels like, shoot, this is the climate, not just the season.
Yeah, I think this is true. The more I'm able to realize the brevity of life, the better I'll handle those times. They really are seasons. And when you get to be 72, you really do realize the brevity of life.
Sure.
And those seasons that I went to that seemed long at the time, now they don't seem so long.
Sure.
Life, we're a ray. We had a beginning and we have no ending. We're going to live forever, either with him or not with him. And he said the 70-year blip that you experience on the eternal, the ray that goes forever, don't let that concern you so much. Realize how brief it really is. My good friend Russell always used to say, it's a cool breath on a warm night, or a warm breath on a cool night.
Sure.
If it's a warm breath on a cool night, how long does that thing last out there? It's there for a bit.
Yeah. Disappears pretty doggone.
Oh my
quick.
goodness, yeah. And it really is brief. So, you know, when I'm intentional about remembering the truth, that it's brief, and when I remember the things that are most important that I can control, you investing in your family, no matter what the circumstances are, you can do it well.
Yeah. Yep.
And seeing those things as seasons, when you have some losses, some of those seem like a long time. But if they're really just a small portion of a warm breath on a cool night, they're not very long.
Yeah. I love sports analogies. You know that about me. And, I use a lot of football analogies, but that's a particularly short season, isn't it? What's the average NFL?
3 years.
3 years. 3 years. So, I guess something I'd like to know based on your response is, this is very short-lived, but sometimes it feels like I lost the opportunity. The opportunity came and went. In that 3-year example, NFL, hey, we lost the playoff game. We probably won't be back here. What would you say if somebody is experiencing some losses or things aren't going their way, and it kind of feels like the ship has started to sail a little bit?
I would say, and it sounds trite, but I'd say to them, are you really investing in loving God and loving people? Because no matter what the platform is, you can do that. Mm-hmm. Whether you experience loss, you can do that when you're experiencing loss. When you're really struggling, you can still do that. So I'd say being intentional about the behaviors and the practices that give you a chance to serve people. And when people get focused on that, it's incredible how joy returns, even though the circumstances may not be good. Hope and joy are real. And, Paul said you grieve, not just when people die. All kinds of things make us grieve. But we don't grieve like people who have no hope. We grieve like people who have hope, because our hope is for forever, not for just now. And I know that sounds like, oh yeah, there you go again. It's just Bible and spiritual. No, it's the truth.
Yeah. You've gone through those very difficult times. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Steve, one of the things I was really curious your perspective on today is we talked about a healthy leadership team, and you've engaged with leadership teams that were all over the spectrum. What are some sure signs outside of, I think we've talked about a few in particular, what are a few signs that, hey, this leadership team is truly healthy, truly aligned, and, in some cases worth investing in or worth getting involved in? What's some of the just really clear signs that's
You're going to get tired of hearing it.
Yeah.
They're teachable people. They're always worth investing in when they're teachable, no matter what stage they're in. And if they aren't teachable, don't spend your time there.
Sure.
So trying to win people to become teachable people, the marketplace isn't the place to do that. Yeah. Now, if they're not partners, I'm going to have a lot of those on my team.
Sure.
There are people that there are specific jobs that they aren't influencing a lot of other people, and it's a chance for us to influence them. I'm going there.
Okay.
But not on the leadership team.
Okay. You've coached me on this throughout the years. Not everybody has to be a leader. Not everybody should be a leader.
Matter of fact,
most
people aren't leaders.
Yeah.
But our culture, one of the things that schools and our society, I think one of the biggest mistakes we've made is we've lifted up leadership so much, and we've said to all the kids, be a leader, be a leader. Nobody, who's writing the books on followership?
Yeah, not very many people.
No. And majority of people should be good followers. But see, the word being a good follower means you're going to submit. Being a good follower to a CEO on a leadership team means you're going to submit with a good attitude.
Yeah.
So submission's not a popular word for us.
No.
We've been teaching people to show their pride.
Right.
Show their pride instead of helping them become humble and teachable and servant-oriented people who are submissive.
Talk a little bit about, you really changed my perspective on this when you taught me about lead followers.
Yeah.
How do you identify a lead follower?
Yeah.
And I guess, when you have identified a lead follower, fight the temptation to make them a leader, right?
Yeah.
But how do you invest in them otherwise?
Yeah. Well, can I elaborate on the leadership
Absolutely,
model a little bit? Just real quickly.
Absolutely.
Because to understand that,
Okay.
one of the things I discovered was leaders that lead leaders, the key there is, are they going to delegate authority? So they equip them with all the resources they need, and they encourage them. That means give them courage. Sometimes you kick them in the rear, and sometimes you pat them on the back. The third one is leaders need to empower leaders. Delegate the authority. Let it smell like them. Okay? And a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs try to control that. They don't let their leaders, and great leaders leave leadership teams when they're led by somebody who's controlling them. Mm-hmm. Okay? So, and then evaluate them. Those are the 4 E's that go with that. Now, when I'm managing a follower, I'm going to equip them with all the resources they need. Still going to do that. I'm going to encourage them same way, but I'm not going to empower them. I'm going to direct them. Give them really clear directives about what needs to be done and how you want it done, because followers want to know how it's done. My wife loves recipes. She was looking at them all day today. She loves recipes because she knows when she gets a recipe, if she follows the recipe, she knows how it's going to turn out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really good followers enjoy the recipes.
Sure.
They want clear direction on how to do things. Mm-hmm. Now, but spotting the person who has great influence among the followers, that lead follower, often they're not in a position of authority, but you can spot them. You know who they are because the other people talk about them. You hear they're listening to that influencer.
Oh, definitely.
So identify, if you're a CEO and you have a lead follower, let's say you have a manufacturing business, and on the floor, there's a person out there that really influences everybody's attitude out there. Once you spot that person, get them into the early stages of any changes that are going to take place.
Sure.
And get their input on it and help them buy into the changes that need to take place. And you'd be surprised at how much better it goes on the floor when that lead influencer is already buying in.
Now, how do you avoid that type of a situation? How do you avoid it transforming into a decision by committee type situation? Because I think where I've made a mistake is involving lead followers, and before you know it, I somehow communicated this is up for vote.
Yeah, be careful about that.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want CEOs to communicate all the time is we aren't making this decision. I'm making the decision, but we're collaborating to come to the best possible decision, but it's my decision to make.
And that's just the crystal clear communication.
Very clear. And the followers need to hear the same thing to a lead follower. I'm ultimately going to make the decision, and it's going to be my responsibility. If this doesn't work, it's my fault, but I value your input, and I really want that. And I think you have your finger on the pulse of the people on the floor, and we need your input.
Yeah.
But I'm the decision maker. You see, collaboration isn't communism.
Yeah, right.
It's not committee. Collaboration is a group of people coming together to discover the best way they can together. But I decide when the discussion's over as a leader. I decide we might see 3 different options. I'm going to choose which one. So it's not by committee. It's by leader.
Okay. No, that's great. We talked earlier about that collaboration and the team focus and the assertiveness. If we were to draw that out on a quadrant, the opposite would be somebody very passive and individualistic, right? Are there roles for those people in the workplace? I mean, do you ever want to hire somebody who's passive as just one example?
Absolutely. There are a lot of people that are task-oriented, and we need them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they need paid well, because what they're producing is what we need produced.
And they do it really well.
They do it really, really, really well. Some people, that is their role on the team. And sometimes we do need them in to hear some in a collaborative discussion. We need to hear their input, but often we don't. And many times they don't want to be in those meetings.
Right.
They want to get something done.
Right. We ran into an issue recently at work where management identified an issue, put a pause on a project, and every individual contributor on the project said, "Oh, good, we've been seeing this issue for a long time." And I think the Toyota way talks about,
But they hadn't told you.
No. And I think the Toyota way talks about everybody needing to be empowered to stop production because they see something.
Yes.
How do you coach those individuals on the passiveness might be innate in some way, shape, or form, but there is a time to raise the hand and say, stop.
Yeah. First of all, passive aggressive is not good.
Right.
But there are times that passive people are going to discover something that needs to be talked about. And it's really important to tell them when you spot it, please tell us. Okay. And they have to feel secure.
Yeah. You have to reinforce that.
Somehow
behavior.
you have to say to them, and that's one of the 5 dysfunctions in a team.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that people want to bring the problems, even if you're the problem.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. But they need to feel secure.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make people feel secure? You really do love them.
Yeah.
You really do put them ahead of yourself.
And what will come of that is reinforcing the idea that them bringing up the problem was a good thing. I mean, you dropped the hammer on that situation and don't wonder why you don't hear about it again.
Make fun of them or
Yeah.
drop.
Yeah.
Sarcasm kills that.
Steve, on this podcast over the last couple of episodes, I'd love to give people a little bit of insight into how they can personally grow and some opportunities for people to explore. If you're listening to this podcast and you're kind of stuck in your career a little bit, you're just not really too sure what to do, but you really do care about personal growth and bettering yourself and your team, others around you, where can people start?
Ask the people who know them best to please be honest and tell them where they need to grow.
Takes a lot of trust, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And when you talk about trust in healthy relationships, I give Michael my trust. He can't earn it because he might do enough to earn it, but unless I give it, he doesn't get it. So I give my trust. Here's the truth. I gave my trust to Nancy when we got married. She gave her trust to me.
Mm-hmm.
We trust each other. We break trust on a regular basis. But we do break each other's trust in our relationship. It happens in the marketplace too. It happens on executive teams. We do things that break trust because we put ourselves ahead of other people. As much as I've said about being a servant, being teachable, being humble, we in our flesh, it rears up and we get selfish and we do things. So here's the deal. The quicker you're able to forgive me and give me your trust again, the better off we are.
Mm.
The healthiest relationships are relationships that forgive quickly, really forgive, and trust again. But we have a lot of people that hang on to bitterness for a long time.
For sure.
And it happens in the marketplace too.
Oh, absolutely. You know what I've seen? I've seen something interesting recently where people might come from a job, a bad job, bad leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you may have a track record with them of integrity and fulfilling, doing what you said you're going to do, they still don't believe you yet. And sometimes they can be their own worst enemies in their new opportunity. How can people shake it off, what they came from and start fresh?
That's a great question. The reality is I think it takes some time.
Yeah. Even in perfect scenarios.
Yeah.
On the topic of trust, Steve, something I wanted to talk to you about was when you really go through the ringer with your team in the workplace. Maybe it's a deadline in a couple months, and you kind of get this feeling like this isn't going to work out, and you're going through the ringer with your team. You're taking them through this difficult time. What advice would you have for leadership? How can we go through this known painful experience and come out okay.
First of all, communicate it that it's okay to feel that bad about it.
Yeah.
So communicate to them, here it comes. This looks like it's going to be tough on all of us. I'm going to do my share. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do more than my share. And then you have to do that. If they observe you doing your share and suffering with them. Yeah. But saying to everybody, it's okay to hate this. I get it. I hope this is a season this long.
Yeah.
But communicating that and building a relationship that says we're in this together, that's how to make it happen.
Okay, that makes total sense. So on a related note, I asked my team recently to do something that probably in hindsight was impossible. Not really hard, but really impossible.
Yeah.
And after we put the brakes on and after we said we're going to delay this, I got asked a question, did we fail? Now, I know you don't have the context of the situation here, but what's a great answer to that type of a scenario?
You can't ever fail when you choose to stop doing something that you don't think you have the possibility of doing. Too many, like I've heard it said, I don't quit, never quit, don't ever. That's not true. Wise people know when to quit.
Oh, absolutely.
And because you can put a lot of money down a hole.
Yeah.
Just because you're not going to give in.
Right.
No, that's failure.
Yeah.
Continuing to do something that you should have put the brakes on, that is a failure.
Yeah. Coming back to that the Toyota Way book that I recently read, I mean,
it's good.
Knowing there's a defect and continuing forward, continue to crank this out. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
It's insanity.
Yeah, it's insanity. What would you say to the counter argument that every single thing that's happened had to happen the way it did for you to be where you are today? I mean, I hear that worldview often.
Yeah. I'm not one who believes that every one of my steps was orchestrated by God.
Sure. And I know people do have that.
Yeah,
that
I believe I made some choices that some other choices would have been okay.
Free will.
I would have had a different path.
Sure.
But I also believe when I look back with hindsight, all those steps that I did take led to here.
Sure.
So I believe he's sovereign. He can intervene anytime he wants to do anything.
Yeah.
But I do also, so the mystery of how that works, Michael, I don't know the answer to.
Yeah. What do they call that? The butterfly effect or something like that? Yeah. Steve, I'm curious your perspective on something. I think you and I share a lot of our views on leadership and what leadership means, and that leadership has been largely unchanged. I mean, certainly culture has changed and people change and circumstances have changed, but what it means to be a good leader, I think has been laid out for us a long time ago. How can a leader be innovative in how they lead at this point in the game? Is there such a thing, or is it really sticking to the fundamentals?
I think there are 4 fundamentals that all people that know what good leadership looks like would say is true.
Okay.
But the 5th one is the most significant one. And when I think they were working at Gallup, Collins, one of the things he discovered when he was looking for who the best leaders were, it wasn't in Good to Great, that was in the other book. He found out that there were the greatest leaders he discovered in the United States all had one thing in common, the very top tier. Now, there were a lot of really, really good ones.
Sure.
But the 5th quality that he saw in them was humility. They all believed their leader team knew more than they did. I think that is the key ingredient.
Steve, I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, but we put out a podcast a couple of weeks ago about work-life balance. We had a great conversation about this. Really short. My view on work-life balance is you have one life, and this conversation can sometimes be boiled down to how many hours do I spend at work, and that's what a lot of people refer to as work-life balance. But throughout the podcast, we talk about look, if you're enriched in the workplace, you can benefit tremendously in your personal life, vice versa. I mean, again, you really just have one life. What's your philosophy on this term work-life balance, and what have you coached the top level? Because the top level tends to throw this away a lot of times. At least that's been my observation is Especially a lot of executives don't do this well. What's your philosophy on this? How do you coach people on
When
this?
I started coaching executives, what I did early on was we'd make a list of what they valued, and I'd ask them this question at the front end. What would you like the people you care most about to say about you when they're standing at your grave? What would you like to hear them say? And it was interesting.
Yeah. Did you ever get...
We actually would write it down.
You would write it down. Okay. I wondered how many people were willing to actually share that right away.
Yeah. Well, some people didn't want to, but they really would eventually write it down. And so then I'd say, okay, now let's look at your calendar and your checkbook and see how you're spending your time and your money to accomplish hearing that.
Mm.
Okay. Now, work-life balance, it's all life, just what you said.
Yeah.
I see my opportunities, the platform that I work on in the marketplace is an incredible opportunity to love God and love people. That's the way I see it. I also have to provide for my family. And I want to produce goods and services for the rest of our culture and the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So how much time does that take? Well, it takes a lot of time to provide for your family, to earn the money that you need to provide for your family, to produce the goods and services that we have the opportunity to produce. It's all good, okay? So it's not about the time. It really is about what the priorities are.
Sure.
And my family knows if I'm building a business, they know if the business becomes more important to me than they are.
There's no hiding that.
And it's not about time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But they also know when I'm building a business that they're still more important when they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever it takes to prioritize the people in your life appropriately. So God and people. And he said the order, he makes it clear, our family is really important, more important than other people to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I'm going. The real problem most entrepreneurs have, they are in love with their business.
Sure. Sure.
They're just totally, they'll sacrifice anything.
They definitely seem to think that their business is a reflection of who they are as a person deeply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When your self-worth gets wrapped up in what you produce rather than who you love.
Mm-hmm. Steve, I appreciate you coming so much today, talking to us about broad range of interesting topics. Thanks for the investment you've made in me over the years and everything you've taught me. And I've tried to put some of it to good use here, but I appreciate you coming today. Did you have any closing notes for our listeners?
I sure do. Iron sharpens iron. One of the things I learned that I've experienced with you is when I am in a relationship that's about discipleship, not about evangelism. All my relationships are either about me proclaiming who God is and who Christ is in my life and who he is in somebody else's life, or sharpening each other who already believe that. When I realized that, my goodness, God, you gave me an opportunity to work with younger men who are going to keep me in touch with reality, today's reality. There's a technology in today's podcasts are today's reality.
Sure.
Giving me a chance to use this platform to tell people about what I really care about.
Yeah.
So thank you. You have been an incredible partner, discipling me, helping me grow. Well, I've had a chance to help you grow, son.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm grateful for that, and I hope everybody has relationships like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very fulfilling, and it's a beautiful part of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Steve. Again, I really appreciate it, and just want to thank the folks here at Dream On Studios again for setting us up today to record, and thanks for all of our listeners for tuning in. Thank you.